knows everything about us. He's all-encompassing. He knows the past, the future, the present. And I'm like, how do I teach on that? Like, how do I speak on that? Like, there's so much to that. It's a hard concept to really even be able to conceptualize, like, how much he's a part of everything. So I'm going to try with sharing a little bit of my story, but I'm going to start in the Word, because I thought this was a good way of showing that too. So I'm going to go to Psalms 139. I don't know if I have the same version book that you all have. But it's kind of a long one. I was going to read highlights, but I thought the whole thing was good, so I'm just going to read the whole thing. So Psalms 139. O Lord, you have examined my heart and know everything about me. You know when I sit down or stand up. You know my thoughts even when I'm far away. You see me when I travel and when I rest at home. You know everything I do. You know what I'm going to say even before I say it, Lord. You go before me and follow me. You place your hand of blessing on my head. Such knowledge is too wonderful for me, too great for me to understand. I can never escape from your spirit. I can never get away from your presence. If I go up to heaven, you are there. If I go down to the grave, you are there. If I ride the wings of the morning, if I dwell by the farthest oceans, even there your hand will guide me, and your strength will support me. I could ask the darkness to hide me, and the light around me to become night, but even in darkness, I cannot hide from you. To you, the night shines as bright as the day. Darkness and light are the same to you. You made all the delicate inner parts of my body and knit me together in my mother's womb. Thank you for making me so wonderfully complex. Your workmanship is marvelous. How well I know it. You watched me as I was formed in utter seclusion, as I was woven together in the dark of a womb. You saw me before I was born. Every day of my life was recorded in your book. Every moment was laid out before a single day passed. How precious are your thoughts about me, O God. They cannot be numbered. I can't even count them. Hold on. Don't have the best eyes. I can't even count them. They outnumbered the grains of sand. And when I wake up, you are still with me. Oh God, if you would destroy the wicked, get out of my life, you murderers. They blaspheme you. Your enemies misuse your name. Oh Lord, shouldn't I hate those who hate you? Shouldn't I despise those who oppose you? Yes, I hate them with total hatred, for your enemies are my enemies. Search me, O God, know my heart, test me, and know my anxious thoughts. Point out anything in me that offends you, and lead me along the path of your everlasting life. So I loved how that, it just talks about how much he knows us, how he's all-knowing. He's in everything. And I know that firsthand in my life. And when I was thinking of, what a way to show that was, I was thinking about a recent storm I went through in my life. And a lot of you have walked through this storm with me. It lasted years, and there's ups and downs throughout it. There's like a long backstory to it, so I won't even get into all that. But I figured I would share a little bit about it. And one thing God was showing me is he was preparing me for the storm before it ever even happened. Months before it happened, in discipleship class, I was given a postcard with like birds of some sort on it. I couldn't find it. I keep them all in my book, but I couldn't find this one. But the word was something about being a mother bird and protecting my children. And then Elsie was given a vision, or I don't remember if it was just a vision or if it happened, but there was a bobcat like going towards like a young deer. And yeah, and Elsie like put her hands up and she was praying, and the bobcat left and the young deer was safe. And that like took me through some really dark times, and I needed that strength from that experience to help me through this storm. There were so many times I would, in my closet's like my alone space, so I'd be in my closet and I just had my hands up and I was picturing Elsie. And I was just praying in my prayer language and knowing that God's got this, that it's going to be okay. And he just, you know, he knows everything. So if we are in that relationship with him, we can see that. We can be aware of that. We can listen for that. And I don't know how I would have gotten through that storm without the body here and everything he did to prepare me for it. So it's quite a long story, and he was in every single part of it, so it's hard to, I'm like, how am I going to talk about all this, God? And I kept being like, I don't need to share it, and kept saying I do. So, so I had struggled with addiction for a part of my life, and in that time, my kids were with their dad more than they were with me. And it seemed like as soon as he had the kids in his care, he was trying to get me out of their life. And that seemed to be a pattern. I would go months where he wouldn't let me see them. I'd have to go to court and get a judge to tell him he can't do that, and then I'd get the kids. And it was just kind of this reoccurring pattern. And then one day we got a call from CPS saying that I couldn't see the kids. And they couldn't really tell me anything. But I couldn't have any more contact. And they would explain more later. But that was like it. And I was like, what? Like, what do you mean I can't see my kids? And everything had been going well. I had been clean and sober for probably like 5 years at that point. I owned a house. You know, I had built my life back up, and I'm like, what's going on? And I immediately reached out to pastor and a few other people, and there was like immediately people praying, and everyone I talked to was hearing like, pray that the truth is revealed. The truth is going to be revealed. And it was like, you've got to go through this for the truth to be revealed. And so as time progressed, you know, we learned a little more of what was going on, and he was accusing me of sexually abusing the kids, beating, Trish was 6 months old at the time, of beating her with a belt at 6 months old. Like, there was just this list went on and on and on. And so they had to do their investigation, and then I had to go to court before I could see the kids. And this is where one of the places where God stepped in. Like I said, he was in all of this. They wanted me to agree to say some things happened, not the sexual abuse, but that, I don't even remember, like maybe they were neglected or there was something. And I'm like, I can't agree to something that didn't happen. And I have, you know, lawyers fighting for me and all that, and the judge wasn't being nice and threatening, and he didn't know me. It was just kind of chaos, and God said, agree. And I was like, what? Like, why would I do this? That doesn't make sense. But I had total peace. So I was like, I've got to agree. And I tried to like manipulate it a little, like, I agree that that's what you're saying. So I still was trying to manipulate it, but either way, I agreed. And what that did, and I didn't understand it at the time, but it opened for this investigative piece that then revealed all the lies that he was saying. And that couldn't have happened without this intense case. If I hadn't agreed, it would have all gone away. And we probably would have been in the same pattern, a year later. But that it didn't make any sense in that moment why I would agree to something that wasn't true. But God had a plan, and he knew what he was going to do with that. Now, this went on for years, and it was painful. It wasn't easy, but he kept shining through. So one of the things he did at this very court hearing, someone had requested a therapy dog. And while this was going on, the prosecutor and the therapy dog person could hear the stepmom telling the kids what they needed to say. So they could overhear them being coached of say this or say that, do this when you're there, and all that. And then it was actually the prosecutor, the one prosecuting me, that reported this to CPS, that got this case opened against, them, the more investigative piece. But I didn't know that for months later, many months. But through all of this, God had me walking in peace. Through every step, I prayed more than I've ever prayed in my life. And I did everything I could to just walk in his path. I would pray every day, like, Lord, I don't want a single word to come out of my mouth that's not your will. I don't want to take a single footstep that's not your will, God, because I trust him. And I knew that he was going to bring the good out of this, even when it didn't look like that. And there was many times it didn't look like that. But he brought in a therapist that would listen to what I had to say. And this therapist was handpicked by the stepmom, someone that she knew. And I kind of knew that, and I was like, oh man, like they're already only listening to them. They had tried to put up blockades so I couldn't even speak to this woman, but God showed through. And something we'd always pray, I prayed before they ever had a session with her, and before I did, we all met together often, that she would just know, that she would feel it in her stomach, is what I always prayed, that she would just know beyond a doubt that these are lies, and be able to decipher, because there's truth too, that she could know what was being said. And she did. Her reports made a huge difference. And it showed that truth. And it did for years. This woman had advocated for those girls and for that truth. And one of our last times together, she said, every time I was with him, I just had this feeling in my stomach. She's like, I knew it was wrong. I knew it was wrong. And that's God. That's God working in every piece of our lives. And again, that was something I didn't know until, that was at the end. But he was there. He was there through all of it. He was even there, of course, once the counselor was revealing all these lies, they fired her and found a new one, another hand-picked one by an attorney, where the attorney was like, pick this one. And she wouldn't speak to me for a long time because the attorney didn't want her to, because then she can't lie in court. And but even that was God. She was a believer. And the kids would talk about River of Life and what they did here. Later in this, they were in the Christmas program, and she watched it. She got to see what the kids did and what kind of life they were living. And God worked through that, and that did not look promising most of the time with her. But he was there. She is a big reason. I don't know what all happened at the end, that the kids are here full time now. Yes. They don't even really go visit, but it was that counselor that was like, enough's enough. Something's got to change, and she made that change happen. So as much as the enemy would try to come in, and they tried and tried, God kept showing through, no matter what. And something God would keep telling me from the beginning, David had said this, one of the first days, I feel like, it was very early on in all this, that the relationship with the kids would not be harmed because of this. Like, there'll be no harm that comes of it. And I think that showed through. I think if anything after, like, we grew from it, and it helped our relationship because God was in it. And so even when there's times where it doesn't look like God's working, or it might not even feel like it, because our feelings like to lie to us, like, he's there. He's there at every step of the way, working through it. Let's see, I wrote down lots of things to say because there was so much. One of the things was, like, over and over again, God kept showing me to have grace. And that's something I prayed for multiple times a day, just have grace, as I'm talking with all these professionals, all these people, and with their dad and stepmom, and through everything was just to have grace and to show love, which in a time like that, when someone's trying to take your kids from you and saying lies, it felt like, how am I supposed to love these people? And I asked God that a few times, like, what can I do? Like, I don't know how to do this. Like, they're hurting me, they're hurting my kids. Like, I can see all this pain. Like, so how do I show love and kindness? But he did, and he did through me. I had no part in that. He was so good. And something that one of the CPS workers would say several times, she's like, I don't know how you did this. She's like, you have gone through this with more grace than I've ever seen anybody. And they knew what I was facing. They're like, this isn't even true. And she's like, and you had complete grace. And I could say, it's God. Like, that's not me, that's God working in my life. And one of the workers here in Manistee would always say, like, this doesn't make sense. There shouldn't even be a case. Like, what's going on? And I would have to calm her down. I'm like, it's okay. God has a plan. There's a reason this case is here. And I know it makes me look bad, but God's got this. Like, he has a reason that we're going through this. And I'm going to read another passage because this is what God had showed me during this time, and he showed it to me, I think, on Saturday. So he knew I was going to be speaking tonight because he brought it back up to me. But it's Romans 13. So Romans 13, starting in 9. It says, don't just pretend to love others. Really love them. Hate what is wrong. Hold tightly to what is good. Love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. Never be lazy, but work hard and serve the Lord enthusiastically. Rejoice in our confident hope. Be patient in trouble and keep on praying. When God's people are in need, be ready to help them. Always be eager to practice hospitality. Bless those who persecute you. Don't curse them. Pray that God will bless them. Be happy with those who are happy, and weep with those who weep. Live in harmony with each other. Don't be too proud to enjoy the company of ordinary people, and don't think you know it all. Never pay back evil with more evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you're honorable. Do all that you can to live in peace with everyone. Dear friends, never take revenge. Leave that to the righteous anger of God. For the scriptures say, I will take revenge, I will pay them back, says the Lord. Instead, if your enemies are hungry, feed them. If they are thirsty, give them something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals of shame on their heads. Don't let evil conquer you, but conquer evil by doing good. it's a beautiful scripture, but when you're in the middle of a storm, it's not always easy to follow through on that. And like I said, I don't think I could have done it alone. Like, that's one of the important things about being with a body, is that we don't go through it alone. We don't have to go through anything alone, whether it's good times or bad times. Like, we have each other to go through them together. We can celebrate with each other. We can talk about the wins. And then we can also be there to hold each other in the hard times, to talk through them. I remember times sitting over there just crying. Like, I couldn't stop. I'm in church and I just couldn't even stop crying. And people would just come pray over me or just sit next to me. You know, and I know we all went through that together. You know, it wasn't going through it alone. But that love, he showed me how to love my enemies. And I still do. I think that taught me a lesson that I'll always carry with me. And to see, I learned how to pray to see people through God's eyes, not through my eyes. Because my eyes are stained and judgmental and tired, so they don't want to give grace and mercy that God so freely gives us. And when I look through God's eyes, I see people different. And when I look through God's eyes, I could see the father and stepmother the way he does, as people that were hurting, that people that need him. And I could pray for them, and not pray for them because I wanted the kids back, but pray for them because they deserve salvation too. And they deserve the happiness and an abundant life that we get to live in, and that peace that surpasses our understanding. You know, we all deserve that. So through all this, I also prayed for my faith to be increased every day. I would imagine it was like being in a pitch black room and just walking. Like, you just had to trust. Like, you just had that God was going to walk you through that and hold your hand. And I also, like, there was the time when the girls did come here full time, and it was maybe a year after kind of that stuff kind of settled down. And at first it was like, why is it taking so long, God? Like, this is all over now, yet it seemed like nothing changed. But it was like, okay, like, there was a reason for everything. Pretty soon after it was dismissed, at one time, God said it was okay to go in front of a judge and be like, just dismiss all of this, it's nonsense. And he did. And it was finally dismissed, but that was after all of the truth had been pulled out through the other investigations. And at that time, I filed for a change of custody because I have all this truth. And that was another court case. So on the surface, it looked terrible. Like, I didn't win. It's like I could tell when I was in it, like, God had to be a part of it, because it's like my lawyer was tongue-tied. Like, she couldn't even say anything. And I'm like, what's going on? Like, I thought, yes, this is it. We're going to win this. But looking back, like, what I didn't know is he had already had stuff filed to, like, take away all my parenting time. But because I filed first, he didn't get a chance. And then by doing that, it was kind of too late for him to file, or he would have had to wait some time. So it stopped the enemy's plan. So it wasn't meant to win. It was meant to stop what the enemy was trying to do. And so even through that, you know, God shows. So just because it looks like it's not going the way we want it to, or what we thought it was going to be, we just have to trust that God knows what he's doing. He's all-knowing. He's all-encompassing. He's everything. We have all the names on the wall because he's so many different things, and he can be so many different things to us, and he's always what we need in that moment. He's always there. So even after that, like God started to show, I think it was like soon after that, the girls started saying, I don't want to go back. Like it's time for the change. And so it was like they got to be a part of that decision, and they got to fight for that, and they knew what it was like to have the whole church praying for them during that time. And I think that's what God was waiting for. If it had happened in my timing, it might not have gone so well. But God knows what will be best, and he knew what timing would be just perfect for our family, for what was good for us. So really, I guess how to sum that up with being in a relationship with God is you know, like I pray every day for his will, for the knowledge of his will, for the strength to carry that out, because I need that strength too. I pray that he straightens my path. I pray that he changes my thoughts so they're his will, because if I lean onto my own understanding, we're going to be in a mess. And it happens quick, like within minutes, if I don't pray. And sometimes I need to stop and pray again. Because when I listen to him, it's going to work out exactly how it's supposed to. There was a silly thing the other day. I shared this with Jan the other day. It was like 10 a.m. and I was with a client, and they wanted McDonald's, and I've been trying not to eat fast food, and I was doing good with it. And God said to get something to eat. And I'm like, I'm not hungry yet. You know, it's 10. I had breakfast. And I'm like, and it's McDonald's. Like, why would God tell me to get McDonald's? He knows I'm trying to eat healthy. And once I eat it once, it's down the rabbit hole. But I listened. I had my McDonald's. Well, that day got turned upside down. I was so busy. I don't think I sat down to rest till like 8 o'clock at night. And I wouldn't have had time to eat. And God knew that. He knew what my day was going to look like. And he knew that the McDonald's was better than not eating all day. And I get crabby when I don't eat, so he knows that too. So I have to be in tune with the Lord. I have to be listening through everything. And I kind of chuckled the other day at work. I had a task that I didn't really want to do. There was an intern then. Normally I assign someone on my team to guide the intern through the day. I might talk to them at the beginning of the day and the end of the day, but they don't really follow me. Well, last minute I find out everyone's in an all-day training but me. So I'm like, oh, I got an intern with me all day, and then it doubled my work on top of it, plus having someone. And so I was not being grateful about it. And it was totally a God thing. And then I had to laugh at myself and repent for for not knowing that, for not being grateful or not realizing, like, he's in everything. And I too play Christian music all the time, like James shared earlier in our testimony time. And so I always have it on in my work car. And of course, clients can change it if they want, but I always have it on because it sparks conversation. So that's kind of how that started with the intern, and kind of talking about his path with God. And it was really great. I got to speak to him. God gave me a word for him. And we talked about God almost all day, and how we can use that, as therapists, how we can use it in our work and when we work with other people. And I could have tried to assign that out or say, oh, it's a bad day, I can't take the intern today, everyone's in training. But when we listen to God, it turns out exactly the way it should. And we're blessed by it, and other people are blessed by it. So, again, just like that, trying to stay in his will, his perfect will, and I don't know about you, but I can feel when I'm out of it. It's usually, I have found, if I'm not getting good sleep, if I'm hungry, if I'm not taking care of myself, if I'm not having alone time and me time, like it's harder for me to stay in God's will. It's harder for me to hear him because I'm too wrapped up in feelings or other things that are going on because I'm not taking care of myself. So I know I have to put the work in to take care of myself, and then I have to put the work in to spend time with God. Because if I'm not spending time with God, then I'm not going to hear those little things like get the McDonald's. I'm not going to know the difference between his voice and my voice. And so by being in relationship with him, we get those things. But all right, I think that's all I got.